Hi guys, we are here with the wonderful, awesome, amazing Gurinder Chadha, whose movie Viceroy's House is in theaters right now. It's an amazing, amazing film about India's independence and becoming a separate nation. So congratulations on the wonderful, wonderful film, Gurinder. It's amazing. It's a very sensitive and difficult subject, I would say. But you do a great job of presenting and informing. I mean, I learned a lot of new things. So tell me, why this subject? I mean, you've done a lot of contemporary movies, but why a period piece and why this?
Well, I've never made a period piece before, and so I wanted to make a sort of big, sumptuous British costume drama. But the subject is one that was very close to me because my family were personally, directly affected by the partition of India. And it's amazing that most people in the world don't know about the partition of India. And that basically in 1947, when the British were leaving, after ruling India, being there for like 300 years, they left, with huge problems basically because India was divided and Pakistan was created. And many people, including my family, became refugees overnight as 14 million people had to go from one side to the other. So I had always grown up under the shadow of partition, so I knew that at some point I wanted to make a film about it, but I just didn't know when and how. And so after I became a mother, I decided that I wanted to do something that taught my children a bit about their history.
Yeah, and I have to say that I really learned a lot of new things, like the fact that it probably was a pressure even for British to make sure they leave the country with, like, as we see in the film, like our legacy. And a lot of those, I'd never thought of that perspective because growing up in India, learning it from Indian perspective, you
Yes.
don't understand that. Was there, and you growing up in British, I'm sure you
Yeah,
have
well,
your own.
yeah. I mean,
Anything
the
you learned?
film. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the film is very much a film from a British Indian female mother perspective, and you have to see it like that because we as women, and as mothers, we don't get to tell these big historic epic films, it's very rare. And so it's a subject, which was, as you say, is quite sensitive. Again, is the mother's hand on how I talk about the violence or don't talk about the violence, how I chose to show a lot of what happened, comes directly from me being a mixture of all those things, British, Indian, female. But the main thing for me was in doing our research, we were introduced to a book by Narinder Singh Sarila, where he had come across top secret British documents that from 1945 when Churchill was Prime Minister, which really challenged the history of what happened at the end of British rule in India. We had all been taught a particular history of the role of Mountbatten in dividing the country, but these documents pointed to a whole different reason of what happened. So for me, the film is my chance to challenge the history of the British Empire and talk about history from my perspective, and challenge the fact that the British Empire's version, was untrue. So the film is quite a challenge, and it starts with a quote, which is "History is written by the victors," and that's certainly true. Because one man's history is another man's lies.
Right, right.
But here I've been able to talk about my own history in my own words, which is something that's very rare in our movie business.
Plus, I really enjoyed the perspective of, voyeuristic perspective, so to say, or like common man's perspective, not
Right.
because you have these people, characters who are experiencing it from inside,
Yes.
and how they are feeling and battling with it, which is amazing. I mean, was there a particular reason you approach it like that versus so many other ways that's been done?
Well, when you're a filmmaker like me coming from Britain, you always have to start your movie, in a way that is going to make the whole audience comfortable, because you've got to make everyone feel like this movie's for them. So I start the movie feeling very much like a David Lean movie or a Merchant Ivory movie or a, proper British period movie. And then gradually, my interest is perhaps a lot of course, the leaders, the Mountbattens, Gillian Anderson, Hugh Bonneville, Michael Gambon, the big actors. Then there's Gandhi and Nehru and Jinnah. All those are important people, but my interest is also the little people, the servants, you know. But to start with the servants, you know, is tricky. So I start with the big people, and then gradually the people who might have been extras in someone else's movie start becoming the main feature in my movie, and so they carry the emotional heart of all the decisions that are being made upstairs, you know, and we follow the impact of those decisions on the smaller people downstairs.
Right, and that makes you connect to the film in a very different way.
Yeah.
Because you're a voyeuristic experience of actually how it's going and how it's affecting you as an audience at that time.
Yeah.
So that was amazing.
I think it's quite interesting because you don't have to directly, you know, be connected to the history to appreciate the film, because it's terribly resonant for today. And I have found, you know, that people all over the world have written to me, and I've met people. I met a man in Australia at a screening in Sydney who got up and said, look, I'm a Bondi Beach boy, you know, I've been a surfer for 60 years on Bondi Beach. And he said, I've watched your film and I've just sobbed through the whole film because it's, you know, made me feel sad about how my own country, Australia, you know, is about its borders, you know, and refugees. And so that was in Australia, you know, other places too. The film is terribly relevant to today, even though it was set at an event 70 years ago. That idea of, you know, politicians trying to divide people on the basis of hate, the rise of hate crimes, the intolerance towards other people, all these were very present, you know, and manipulated in 1947, and we see that around us today, and that's what makes the film very relevant, I think.
Right, and I also felt like, you know, not directly reflected, but you see U.S. leaving Afghanistan or countries, like, you know, I was just thinking about all those current issues that going on and how it touches on all those subjects.
Well, the real issue of the independence of India was that it was really the beginning of the Cold War. You know, America and Britain, you know, were very nervous of Russia, you know, and what was going to happen in Asia post-war. So what we're seeing happening today has its roots in what happened post-war, you know, which is where the film is set.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the casting. I mean, one thing is, of course, we get to see the wonderful, amazing Om Puri in one of his best roles. He's amazing in the film. How was your experience? I mean, now unfortunately we don't have him with us anymore, but how was your experience working with him?
Well, I had been wanting to work with Om Puri for a long time, and we'd met many times, and the right roles didn't seem to come up. And so when I sent him this script, he was over the moon because 37 years ago, he was in the last British film made on this subject, which was Gandhi. So now when he got the script, he was over the moon because then he was starting his career. And at this end of his career, he was happy he was going to be in a same subject film, but this time made by an Indian woman, you know, so that made him very happy. And then on set, he was, you know, as you know, the consummate professional, and small little gestures that he did, you know, it was amazing to watch how he developed his character, you know. But on set, he was very, very thrilled to be on the set because he was an actor that was known in British cinema, American cinema, and Indian cinema. So he was comfortable with the British crew and the Indian crew and the American actors and, you know, all the actors. And when his scenes were over, and we'd say, right, you're done now, so you can go back to the hotel, he would say, no, I'm going to stay here. Get me a whiskey. I'm going to sit here, and I just want to be with you all. And the sad thing for us was that this was his last film now, and he didn't get to watch the final film, which is a great shame, because I think he would have loved it, you know. And I think the sentiments of the film were very befitting to his political ideals, you know, because he was on Twitter quite a lot, you know, before he died. And I feel that he would have really appreciated the film in that context.
My last question, you've been, I mean, diversity and inclusion has become a really huge word now in Hollywood, but you've been making wonderful films for a long time, and I've been your fan for over 15 years. What do you think has changed in the last 15 years in front of you that it's become such a big word, and what's your message to other people of color and young women who want to be doing this?
Well, I think for all the talk of diversity, I still think it's hard, you know. I think it's still hard for me to make a film, and this took me 7 years, you know. it's still hard for us to make films from our own perspective. You know, but that doesn't mean you have to stop trying, you know. Every film I've made, I've had to struggle with, basically, except one, and that was a film I made with Paramount Studios called Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging, and that was a kind of an English cast, English cast, you know. But every film I've ever made with a person of colour in it, I've had to really struggle for, even though I'm sort of one of the most successful directors in Britain, and I've made a lot of money in the box office. It's just hard, you know, and I think that until you know, we have to just keep banging on about it and keep making noise about it and keep pushing those doors open, and also being successful, you know. I mean, it's important that people come and support this film, and any film by a person of colour, so that people can go, oh, okay, people want to see films by them, you know, about them, you know, we should be making more, you know. So it's an uphill struggle, but I think that there do seem to be a lot more people of colour making films, more women making films, which is a good thing. I just think that they need our support. They need everybody's support, and we need to go for that opening weekend. We need to support them if we want to see more stories from our perspective.
Well, congratulations on this wonderful film,
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much for your time. Thank you.